Hello, this is the House of Logic video about how to build a Proxmox cluster for your home lab environment. And what we're going to do as part of this video is to quickly show the nested virtual machines and also to build the actual cluster. And we're going to do a quick overview of the different options around the more common hypervisors that are available out there in the market at present. So what we'll quickly have a look at first is we've actually got this nested virtual machine. Now this is already set up in the environment. I didn't want to force people to sit through the exciting video footage of me building yet another Linux machine. So it's a Ubuntu 2404 machine, and we can see here that this is running. So, it's a nice matrixy screensaver. So there it is, it's running. So that's running on this host called PVE1, which if we go up to, let's have a look at the summary and see what this says. So we've got, we haven't got any Premo guest agent, so I don't know what the IP address of this one is. But the PVE1, as built on a previous video, or either one or two, we can actually find on this top level old laptop, which has 4 gig of RAM. So on our actual main hypervisor here, we can on our nested hypervisor here, excuse me, we can see that we're using 2 gig of RAM out of our PVE host, which, if we look at the summary, has 3.82 gigabytes, so effectively 4 gig of RAM plus whatever overhead is being taken off. So that is a nested virtual machine inside, so it's a guest inside a guest. And PVE1 is our host / guest inside the PVE M6500 top level host. So what we'll do, and this is just to have a quick detour from the actual build, is to have a look at the different options around clustering. Why the Proxmox option is actually quite interesting, because what you actually have when you've built the Proxmox cluster, which is a very, very easy process, is you've actually got something where you can connect to any IP address within that cluster and use it to manage the virtual machines within it. So if you've got no designated master node effectively, so if you were to lose host number 1 and you have hosts 2 and 3 up still operational, you can actually then still continue to operate the virtual machines within hosts 2 and 3. This is quite unusual, but also it is accompanied with this form of, and I don't know the ports or anything for this at the moment, but there is actually intra-host communication. There clearly has to be in order for this to function as intended. In comparison, if you're actually looking at something like Hyper-V, so with Hyper-V, if you are if you're a user and you're planning to manage a number of Hyper-V hosts, you've basically got to go and connect to each host, and you could do that through the remote management tools, or if you want to, you could an RDP onto the desktop of each host and manage it that way using the Hyper-V manager individually on each one. It does get to be quite time consuming. Not to say you can't move machines between hosts, but it's not the best. And there are some clustering options, but they can be very, very complicated, and they often need shared storage and things like cluster shared volumes. So if you're looking at something that is actually something that works using storage that's directly attached to each host, which is much more common if you're using domestic hardware, or if you're wanting to have a good play around with a virtualization system at home, Proxmox has actually got some quite nice features. Compare that with VMware, and where you actually are looking to scale that out beyond a single host. You can, as a user, I've not drawn it on here, if you have an ESXi host, if you're lucky enough to have a version of that around that still works, then, because Broadcom have stopped issuing it, is why I say that, then you can actually go and manage that directly. It is quite feature limited in terms of some of the things you can do. You can't make snapshots and templates quite as easily. It's a bit more restrictive. The way that you would typically manage it at scale is going to be using the vCenter Server appliance or one of the other wrapper tools that they've got. There's some cloud based I think vCloud Director is springing to mind. I'm not sure if that's the correct term for it anymore. But it's very much a centrally managed approach through the vCenter server. So that means if your vCenter server has to be rebooted, goes down, God forbid it gets wiped out for some reason, then it's actually quite hard to manage the individual hosts. Proxmox, in comparison, has got the ability to manage any one host in the cluster from any host within the cluster. So it's got to be doing a degree of replication in terms of metadata and management information inside the cluster itself. I'll shut up talking now and actually demonstrate the way that you build the cluster. It is very, very easy. So what you do in your Proxmox, so we're going to go with the PVE1. We'll use that one as the master node. And we'll actually go up to the data center level. And here we have an option underneath cluster to simply create cluster. And we're going to call this one the PVCL1. Let's go with that. .hol.lan as our cluster name. It's going to be using this particular link, which is just the main IP address, in fact the only IP address on this guest/host configuration, and all we need to do is click create. Oh dear, it doesn't look like it likes the node name, so we're going to change that one. We'll just call it PVCL1. Let's go with that and try that instead. Okay, it didn't object to that, so we can use that. There we go, task OK. And hopefully in a minute. In fact, I think that's even it. We don't need to sit here and necessarily wait. We can actually close the dialog. It's a bit confusing, some of the stuff in Proxmox around this. And then to actually join our second node machine, our second PVE instance, all we've got to do is choose Join Information. And this is actually quite similar to the way that you join Kubernetes nodes into a Kubernetes master. So we can click Copy Information. And then we're going to go over to PVE2, and we'll go to the data center there, find cluster, join cluster, right click, paste. It's got its peer address. We need to pop in the peer's password. And hopefully, if I manage to type the password correctly, then this should do the job. So it's fallen back to, because we haven't explicitly mentioned the network link, there's only one network link anyway, doesn't really matter. Let's hit the close dialog on there. It's saying permission denied, but I'm not quite so sure about that. We can close that there. And in fact, it has actually succeeded. I think this is actually a certificate problem now on this host. So in fact, it's now saying connection error. So what we'll have to do is to close this tab. In fact, we'll copy the address first to save ourselves a little bit of typing. And then we can go back in. And we're in. We have PVE1 and we have PVE2 when connected to PVE2 as a host, and we have the same over on PVE1. So we're able to manage those hosts from essentially either host and from either IP address to connect to it. Obviously, this is all being done on a nested virtualization level, so you are effectively talking to two VMs inside another host machine, but that's not really the point. The point is here that you are actually able to build a cluster, and you will be able to then manage that cluster. So in the event of one of these hosts going down, as long as the virtual machines on other hosts are available, you can still continue to operate them. What you can also do, and this is going to be a real baptism of fire, hopefully this is going to work, is you can actually even do live migrations between the members. Now this is one of the reasons why we've made sure that we've got storage with a consistent name. So we have local LVM here and we have local LVM here. If you want to move a machine live, first of all, important point, because the ISO images that you've uploaded, good old Hannah Montana Linux here, which I couldn't quite get to work, is basically located only on a single host. So you must make sure that those are disconnected. So we've got nothing on number 2. If we could do this, we can migrate. And we can actually now start to, in fact, it's even popped up the other target node immediately. It's going to keep the same storage layout, and we can just hit migrate. And that started its migration. And it will actually continue to run during that migration. So just like when you do vMotion in VMware, you are able to move the machine live. I can't recall about Hyper-V and quite what the behavior is there, but you can certainly actually do live migrations, and you can see quite how quick that was to just set up that cluster and get to the point when you can start to do this. So no vCenter requirement, no centralized necessary management point, and of course it's very easy to scale up from a single host, as we've just shown, up to multiples without the complexity of a centralized system. So you can start small, you don't have to build a cluster straight away, and you can add one in later on. So if I just close that one now, it's going to be running. It's going to be running for a few minutes. In fact, I'm actually not going to wait for that to complete as part of this video. It's equivalent of watching paint dry, really. But it's, as you can see, it is still going at this point. Quite how performant this is going to be, I couldn't say, because it's a guest within a guest. But it's still managing to do that nice matrix screensaver with some degree of speed. And we can even open up a web browser, hopefully. I might be pushing it a bit with this, but we'll see. If not, then at least a terminal window should be doable. There we go. Let's do a good ping google.com, and it should do it continuously as it's a Linux terminal. Oh, there goes Firefox. It's woken up. I'm not particularly interested in that now. So we can actually just quite happily leave that. It is migrating. It will go through, and that migration I fully expect to finish. That's kind of about it for this video. So there we go. We've built a cluster. It's taken us under 10 minutes, I think. In fact, it was even less than that. I spent more time talking about the complexities of different hypervisor management models, I think, than anything else. So yeah, that's how you get yourself off to a start with a hypervisor cluster. I said Hyper-V, with a Proxmox hypervisor cluster in Proxmox 8.1, and there's plenty more to explore about this. I think we'll be having a look at networking next. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you like that kind of thing, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks very much.